Good evening, and welcome to tonight's Town Talk. I'm City Manager Scott Neal. This year, we planned a series of town talks around topics important to Edina residents. Tonight's presentation is about elections. City Clerk Sharon Allison will discuss the 2024 elections, what it takes to administer them at the local level, how election security is maintained, and how you can get involved. Sharon will speak for about 30 minutes. After her presentation, she will take questions. Those who would like to ask a question from home can call 312-535-8110 with access code 2632-376-0055 #. There is no attendee ID number. Press *3 on your telephone keypad when you are ready to ask a question during that part of the event. A staff member will mute your line and place you into the queue until it is your time to speak. We will end tonight's town talk at 8 p.m. or whenever we run out of questions, whichever comes first. However, you can continue to ask questions and make comments online at bettertogetheredina.org for the next week. Now I would like to introduce our speaker for tonight, Sharon Allison. Sharon started her work for the City of Edina in 2003 and worked her way up from administrative support specialist in the engineering department to city clerk in the administration department. As the city clerk, Sharon is responsible for managing all elections, documenting and facilitating city council meetings, upholding legal requirements set by the state and city council, maintaining public records and record retention management, and issuing licenses and permits. Sharon is a Minnesota certified municipal clerk and holds a bachelor's degree in business administration from the University of Northwestern in St. Paul. Since beginning her position as city clerk in 2019, Sharon has overseen 10 elections and redistricting in 2020. By the end of this year, that number will be 14 elections. Please join me in welcoming Sharon Allison. Sharon?
Thank you, Scott. And thank you to everyone who is tuned in to hear me talk about elections this evening. On the agenda this evening, I will be talking about the upcoming elections. I'll get into a little bit about how we run elections in Edina, and then I'll talk about what we do across the state and in Edina to make sure materials and equipment are secure. And then I'll wrap up with how you can become involved in an election. There are 5 election schedules for 2024. We've just wrapped up the presidential nomination primary, which was March 5th. And we're moving on to the special elections for the District 6 County Commissioner open seat, the statewide August primary, and ending with the November general election. The special election is to fill Commissioner Chris Latondra's seat, which was vacated in September 2023. State statute requires that if there is more than 6 months before the general election, the county must hold a special election to fill the open seat. The special elections was not good news for those of us in the 16 cities that makes up the District 6 because of the additional work that this creates. Pardon me, I'm having issues with my slides. Our election in November will have 3 open seats, the mayor and 2 city council members. Our website will be updated with candidate filing information as we get closer to the filing period. Let's talk about how we run elections in Edina. Managing an election starts with a calendar to track tasks and deadlines. A well-planned election helps us to navigate our days with ease, reducing stress and ensuring that we are meeting deadlines, such to designate polling places, recruit and train election judges, provide public notices, manage candidate filing, plan for absentee and healthcare voting, and prepare for election day and plan for after election responsibilities. Each year, polling places are identified and reserved well in advance of the next year's election. We have 16 precincts, and therefore 16 polling places. Polling places are generally the same over the years unless they become unavailable. From time to time, residents have asked, why can't you get out of the schools and use churches? There are plenty of them around town. Or, why are you doing voting in churches? These are great questions, but a polling place is more than just a space. An ideal space must be large enough to accommodate the number of voters in the precinct. It must be handicap accessible, has ample parking, and should be located within the precinct boundaries. As you can see from this map, several of our polling places are outside of their precinct boundaries because of limited space to pick from. Available spaces are not ideally located around town that makes it possible for all polling places to be within their precinct boundaries. Regarding schools being polling places, election law requires that school and other public facilities make their building available to serve as polling places. We have a great relationship with the school district staff, and we work together to coordinate operational and security logistics at each school building. Several years ago, we encouraged the school district to not have school on election day for the general elections, and this was implemented. 2024 is obviously an unusual year with 5 elections, and we're working closely with our partners at the schools, churches, and city and county facilities to make it less burdensome for everyone. For the August and November elections, we need a minimum of 200 election judges. Election judges are required to be trained and certified to work on election day. So while recruiting judges, we are typically working on scheduling nearly 30 training classes and developing training plans and materials. Legally, we are required to provide public notices in a specified time frame. If the city finds it necessary to hold a special election, the county must be notified. Candidate filing notice tells you where, when, and how to file if you're interested in running for local office. Election polling place notice tells you the type of election and where to vote. The voting equipment notice tells you when we're holding our public accuracy test and invites you to attend and observe the process. And lastly, the sample ballot shows a list of candidates with ballot questions you'll be voting on. Absentee voting is always at City Hall, or you may also refer to it as early voting. It is usually a balancing act deciding which space in City Hall to use for voting. We need a space large enough to accommodate expected turnout, but with minimal disruption to regular city operation. This work requires calendar management and working with staff as we move them around to different meeting rooms in resetting spaces to accommodate meetings. We hire approximately 10 to 15 temporary employees who are hired and trained to issue absentee ballots. There's coordination with IT to prepare laptops and printers, to change door access for security, and ongoing technology support. Ballot applications are prepared and highlighted to show voters exactly which sections to complete. Ballots are prepared. I'm sorry, lost my spot here. Bear with me for a second. Ballots are prepared and separated by precincts and stored in a secure cabinet. Envelopes are prepared for registered and non-registered voters. Several other forms are prepared to document a variety of activities. Edina has 1 healthcare facility that we coordinate with to make sure residents in that facility gets the opportunity to vote. In the past 5 years, we've seen a tremendous increase in voters voting at City Hall, upwards of 7,000 plus. Whether we're using the envelope system or direct balloting, this increase has created a huge workload at the end of the day when we must make sure our work is in balance. Balancing is simply a term used to describe the process of making sure the total number of ballots we issue matches with the total number that is shown in the state's voter registration system. So by now, polling places are reserved. We're in the thick of recruiting election judges, assigning them, and scheduling training. Training plans are being developed and absentee voting is underway. And it is time to prepare for election day forms that tracks precinct information. The forms used by election judges, these are the forms used by election judges throughout the day. These are just some of the forms that are used. Checklists, instructional, and setup guides are provided to assure all procedures and forms are completed as required and voting equipment are set up properly. This is all part of the chain of custody process to make sure all activities are documented. Ballot test decks are prepared to test functionality and accuracy of the ballot counters and omni ballots, and voter files are downloaded to the poll books. On election night, head judges bring the completed forms and voted ballots back to City Hall. Election staff reviews the completed paperwork with head judges to ensure forms have been completed properly. After Election Day, specific materials are returned to Hennepin County. Election results are tabulated and presented to City Council for approval, which is also called canvassing. I should mention that City Council approval is only needed for local elections. On election night, we pay attention to the unofficial results to see if a recount is likely. And when it's not, we breathe a sigh of relief. I haven't had to do a recount yet, and I'd like to keep it that way. Now, let's talk about election security measures. Election security is a partnership. We work in partnership with Hennepin County, who works in partnership with the Secretary of State's office and the Department of Homeland Security, the Division Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. In January 2017, the Department of Homeland Security officially designated election infrastructure as a subset of the government facilities sector, making clear that election infrastructure qualifies as critical infrastructure. Several security measures are in place, starting with accessing the statewide voter registration system. We use a password and multi-factor authentication, also called MFA. MFA acts as an additional layer of security to prevent unauthorized users from accessing these accounts. In fact, I could not log in if I did not have my phone because the authentication software is on my phone. Secondly, we have the old-fashioned paper process in place. This is our chain of custody for everything we do. This process ensures consistency. We have a form and a checklist for just about every activity. This process starts in the office long before Election Day. For example, we have 3 forms that is compiled with data by my teammate Carrie, Deputy City Clerk, and verified by me, a required signature verification. Carrie called these forms the Big 3. What you're seeing on the screen here right now, as you take a look at the top left, my left that is, you're seeing 2 election judges who are in the process of initialing ballots. And this is because they've already taken the ballots out of the packs and have counted them. Ballots are sent to us in packs of 100 or 50. And election judges are required to count each pack as they open them. Then they're required to initial each ballot, 2 different election judges. The seal that you're seeing is a wire seal that is put into the ballot counter, which is on the bottom photo to my left. And that is an extra security measure to make sure that there isn't any tampering between transit, moving the ballot counter from City Hall to the polling place. And what you're seeing in that photo there are 2 head judges verifying that the information that we've documented on that form matches what they're seeing in that ballot counter, that the seal that's listed on the form is actually that same seal that is in the ballot counter. They're also verifying that the election that shows up on the ballot counter is indeed that actual election for which they're there to work. The box that you're seeing is a ballot transfer case. In this transfer case, we ship the ballots to the polling places, and as you can see, it has a double tamper-proof seal, the label as well as the plastic wire seal. So let's talk about election measures as it relates to the ballots. Starting with shipping and receiving, Hennepin County notifies us when the ballots are being shipped to us. I'm required to be at City Hall to receive those ballots. I have to sign for the ballots when they're delivered. So we do have a signature verification. Those ballots are stored immediately in a limited access room, and they're inventoried immediately to make sure that it is the amount of ballots that we should receive. For early or absentee voting, the ballots are sorted by precincts and they're stored in a locked cabinet. Voted ballots and envelopes are stored securely, and at the end of the day, we reconcile to make sure each of those ballots match what we're seeing in SVRS. The data that we entered in SVRS is matching up with those ballots that are in envelopes. Those ballots and envelopes are securely shipped to Hennepin County, and again, it requires signature verification when the courier comes to pick them up, and then when they're delivered to Hennepin County, signature verification is required. In terms of ballots going to polling places, ballots are counted and documented on the ballot tracking form and also on the what we call the official precinct form. In addition to that happening, we have a tamper-proof system where you can see, again, it is a double tamper-proof, the label as well as the plastic seal. At the polling place, each hour, election judges are required to audit the ballots. So ballots are issued to voters and a receipt is given, and every hour the election judges are required to count the number of ballots, making sure that the number of receipts matches with the number of ballots that they've issued. On election night, results are transmitted to Hennepin County. This is done by VPN, virtual private network. Ballots are removed from the ballot counter, and this is done by 2 election judges of different parties. A final audit is done to make sure that they are still in balance. Voted ballots are placed in tamper-proof transfer cases, and then they're brought back to City Hall by head judges, again, 2 different parties, and they travel in the same car. After Election Day, voted ballots and other paperwork are kept for 22 months in a secure space with limited access. Voting equipments are tested. This is done before Election Day. The ballot counter as well as the omni ballots are tested. There are 2 phases of testing. Preliminary test. This is when we perform an internal assessment of the voting equipment before any public demonstration or use. The public accuracy test is done to demonstrate accuracy of equipment to the public. You are invited to attend and observe the public accuracy test. So why do we test voting equipment? We do it because it's required by law and by rule. To confirm the equipment is working properly before sending them to the polling place. To confirm voting equipment counts votes correctly. To confirm that results transmitted to Hennepin County and the Secretary of State servers are processed correctly. Election security measures is all about integrity of the process, which really is about the integrity of the individuals managing the process. It starts with us, the election officials, long before Election Day. And it continues with the election judges on election. They represent the first line of defense for the physical and cybersecurity of elections. All election judges must keep a watchful eye on all voting equipment, removable memory devices, ballots, and supplies throughout the election to prevent individuals from accessing or attempting to access or connect a device to voting equipment. I hope that with this quick preview, I was able to demonstrate some of the safeguards we take to protect election materials and equipment. And know that you're welcome to join us for a public accuracy test at any time. Now, let's talk about how you can become involved with elections. What are election judges? They administer election procedures. They help guarantee the rights of voters are protected, help guarantee the process is fair and in accordance with our laws, and they're vital to the efficient and honest operation of elections. Become a member of this proud team, working to guarantee the election process is fair and in accordance with our laws. Election judges must declare a party affiliation, and we need a balance of judges from each party affiliation. Specifically, we need election judges from the Republican Party and Legal Marijuana Now Party. And we need them to work the August and the November general election. You may recall I mentioned earlier that we need about 200 election judges. Having enough judges to achieve party balance is crucial, because these activities must be completed by 2 election judges of different parties. The head judges is provided with party affiliation of the election judges on their team and will assign judges to work with them or others to complete these party balance tasks. To become an election judge, individuals must be eligible to vote in Minnesota and be able to read, write, and speak English. However, if you are not eligible if you are a candidate for the current election or you are living with or is related to a candidate for the current election. High school students ages 16 and older are allowed to serve as election judges. And for the past several years, 30 to 40 Edina high school students have worked the general election. We have found this to be a great way to increase our election judge count. Student judges must be U.S. citizens, be enrolled in a Minnesota high school, or be homeschooled. Is at least 16 years old, be in good academic standing, and have written permission from their school and parents. This is a great way for students to learn about elections and voting and earn money at the same time. Students are assigned the same duties as other judges, except for tasks requiring party affiliation, because students do not declare party affiliation. Student judges complete the same training as other judges. Head judges are paid $17 an hour and $15 an hour for election and student judges. State law allows time off to work and serve as an election judge. To do so, you must notify your employer at least 20 days before Election Day. We can provide you with a letter to give to your employer. The workday is long. You will arrive by 6 a.m. and work until about 9 p.m. All election judges must successfully complete a 2-hour basic training course every 2 years to qualify to serve as an election judge. Additional training is required to serve as a head judge, administer healthcare facility voting, and using the poll books to check in voters. On Election Day, the head judges are the lead officials in the polling place and receives special training. They assign roles to each judge and assist with questions. They also handle unusual incidents, manage paperwork, and communicate with us at City Hall throughout the day. All judges split up and take on specific roles throughout the day. Election judges take an oath to be fair and impartial. Your job is to follow the law as written, not how you think they should be. On Election Day, leave your opinion at home. Carefully avoid any action that might influence how a person votes. You will be doing tasks that require careful documentation and record keeping, all requiring attention to detail. A record keeping mistake could mean you and your team are in for a long night as you try to identify the error. This is a typical polling place setup. You can expect to rotate duties throughout the day. Voters are greeted by the greeter judge and is directed to the poll book judge and work their way around to the ballot counter. Become an election judge. To fill out an application, go to the link that you see on the screen. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact Deputy City Clerk Carrie Sinning. Her email address and phone number are listed on the screen. Thank you for joining me this evening.
Thank you, Sharon. That was a really informative presentation. We've now reached the Q&A section of our evening. Sharon will now stand for questions. If you have a question, call 312-535-8110 with access code 2632-376-0055 #. There is no attendee ID number. Plus, press *3 on your telephone keypad when you're ready to ask a question. A staff member will mute your line and place you in the queue until it's your turn to speak. Jennifer, do we have any questions tonight?
We do not yet have any callers. Because there is a slight delay in the broadcast, I'd recommend we wait a minute or so before closing out tonight's session. I will come back to you at 7:30 or when I have a caller, whichever's first.
So Sharon, you, I don't think you mentioned it, but how many people totally work on elections for us, counting all the election judges, some of the public works folks that come and work for you during that time? What's your count?
That's a great question. It's probably about 35.
About 35.
Yeah, because we have probably about 10 to 15 absentee staff or election temporary workers. And on election night, they're here, some of them helping us, plus additional staff. So on election night, there's probably about, I would say, maybe nearly 15 of us that are here checking election judges.
One of the things I think has been interesting since working here is that you vote in this building all the way up until Election Day, and then we tell you you can't vote here anymore. You have to vote out in your precinct or your polling place, right?
That is correct. Okay. Yes, and every time we have voters who are coming in after absentee voting is over on Election Day, attempting to vote here at City Hall, and that is not allowed.
Not allowed.
Right.
Do we have anybody yet, Jennifer? Okay. Well, I think we'll do our wrap up. Okay. Well, that's it for tonight then. As a reminder, you can continue to ask questions and make comments about this evening's presentation on elections at the bettertogether.org site for the next week. The online conversation closes on Tuesday, March 26th. Please join us for our next town talk on June 3rd when we talk to the fire department about their operations. Great job tonight, Sharon. Thank you. And thank you and have a great night.